So yesterday we got some pretty big news. Gary Bettman officially confirming the 24-team NHL playoff format. We kind of all expected this was going to happen, we just didn't know the exact details, and now for the most part we should all have a pretty good understanding of how the playoffs are going to work when the NHL does return to play. For those of you who might not have seen, here is the bracket. Obviously, you have the play-in rounds, which we are going to focus on in today's video, and then the top 4 teams in each conference will do a round robin against each other to determine seeding. So I definitely can't do an entire bracket predictions just because we don't even know the seeds of the top 4 teams in each conference. So we're just going to focus on the play-in rounds today, and I'm going to give you guys my predictions for each round. Just any other normal year in the NHL, the playoffs are super unpredictable, so I can only imagine how unpredictable these playoffs are going to be with this format. It should be a ton of fun. I'm super excited. I know it's still about a month and a half, 2 months away, but at least we have something to talk about right now. And as always, if you guys are new to the channel and you want to see more NHL content like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button. We're on the road to 40K right now. And with all that being said, let's jump right into the video. I guess we'll just begin with the Western Conference. The 11 seed Arizona Coyotes going up against the 6 seed Nashville Predators. At the time of the stoppage, Nashville had 78 points and Arizona had 74. This should be a pretty interesting series. The core that Nashville has right now, for the most part, made it to the Stanley Cup Finals together back when they lost to Pittsburgh. But Arizona does have some championship experience as well with Phil Kessel, who won multiple Stanley Cups while he was in Pittsburgh. I am definitely leaning a little bit more towards Nashville here, but I would not be surprised if Darcy Kemper steals a game or two, Taylor Hall and Phil Kessel get hot, and Arizona ends up upsetting Nashville. With that said, though, my final prediction, I'm going to take the Predators in 4 games, winning the series 3-1. It's weird to say that they'd win a series 3-1, but remember, in the play-in rounds, these are best 3-5, not the usual best 4-7 like we're used to. I always find myself gravitating towards the underdog, so I hope I'm wrong here because I'll probably be rooting for Arizona in this series. Next up, we have the 5 seed Edmonton Oilers against the 12 seed Chicago Blackhawks. I honestly think I'm probably most excited for this series out of any of the other play-in rounds. There's going to be so much offensive firepower on display here. Obviously, Draisaitl and McDavid, who dominated throughout the entire regular season. And then you have guys like Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews, Dominic Kubalik, and Alex DeBrincat. This one should be a ton of fun, and I think it is going to be a pretty tightly contested series, even though the Edmonton Oilers are probably the overwhelming favorites considering they finished with 11 more points than the Blackhawks did. But Chicago knows how to win. They've won 3 Stanley Cups with guys like Kane, Toews, Seabrook, Keith, and Crawford on the roster. I know overall it's a completely different team than it was back then, but still, I wouldn't be overly confident if I was a fan of the Oilers heading into this series. With that said, though, I am going to predict the Oilers do take it 3-2. I think it's going to go all the way. Again, like I said, this is probably the series that I am most excited for, so I definitely hope it takes all 5 games to get a winner. Moving on now to the next series, we have the 10 seed Minnesota Wild against the 7 seed Vancouver Canucks. This is another series that I am pretty excited for. I'm interested to see how a young Vancouver team that's kind of the first year out of their rebuild fares against a veteran team like the Minnesota Wild, who have been to the playoffs countless times but just never really got too far once they are actually in the playoffs. Even though these teams did only finish 1 point apart in the regular season, I feel like Vancouver will probably be looked at as the overwhelming favorites. For me personally, I think they are. I like Vancouver's team a lot more than Minnesota. I think they have better goaltending with Jacob Markstrom. Devin Dubnyk had a shaky year, and I don't know how I feel about Minnesota rolling with Alex Stalock into the playoffs. My prediction, I have the Vancouver Canucks taking this series 3-0. Definitely wouldn't be surprised if Minnesota makes a series out of it and wins a game or 2, but I just don't really see them being able to keep up with the speed of Vancouver with the high-flying offense that they have, and like I said, I definitely gave a big edge in goaltending to the Canucks as well. Moving on now to the final Western Conference series of the play-in rounds, you have the 8 seed Calgary Flames against the 9 seed Winnipeg Jets. Winnipeg did finish with 1 more point, but since it is based off of points percentage, Calgary is the higher seed. Tkachuk led the way for them with 61 points. Kyle Connor and Scheifele led the way with 73 points apiece for the Jets. This one should be pretty interesting. Both of these teams lost in the first round of last year's playoffs. Calgary's lost a little bit tougher though, coming into the playoffs as the 1 seed in the conference and just getting downright dominated by the Avalanche. As far as my prediction for this series goes, I had a pretty tough time actually making one. I think they're pretty evenly matched. Both have a lot of weapons up front. I'd say that blue line edge probably goes to Calgary, but then goaltending edge would definitely go to Winnipeg in my opinion. My prediction though, I have the Jets winning this series 3-1, but I'm not extremely confident about it. I definitely could see it happening vice versa, like Calgary winning 3-1 or something like that. This one is kind of just a gut feeling for me. In my opinion, Connor Hellebuyck was the best goalie in the league this year, and having that on your team heading into the playoffs is obviously a huge bonus. So yeah, again, this one was pretty difficult to predict in my opinion, but I have the Jets taking it 3-1. Moving on over to the Eastern Conference, now we have the 12 seed Montreal Canadiens against the 5 seed Pittsburgh Penguins. I tweeted out yesterday asking you guys which series you are most excited for, and this was definitely a popular answer. It should be an interesting one, but I'm heavily leaning towards Pittsburgh here. I mean, Montreal had a record that was at 500, 31 wins, 31 losses, 9 overtime losses, 71 points. I mean, they were not going to make the playoffs if we're being honest. And then you look at Pittsburgh, 40 wins, 86 points. That's 15 more than Montreal. They should definitely be looked at as the heavy favorites here. With that said, though, this time off has given Montreal the opportunity to get healthy. They had some pretty bad injury luck this season, but saying that about them, you can say the exact same thing about Pittsburgh. They had some awful injury luck as well. It definitely should be a pretty entertaining series. Hopefully Montreal can make it competitive, but my prediction, I have the Pittsburgh Penguins taking this 3-0, a sweep over the Montreal Canadiens. I just don't see any way Montreal upsets Pittsburgh here. I mean, it could happen. The NHL is crazy. Stuff like that does happen. But yeah, I just like Pittsburgh's team a lot more. They have the 2 best players in the series on their team in Crosby and Malkin. It's going to be an uphill battle for Montreal here, and I'm just going to take the safe pick here and take the Penguins in 3 games. Moving along, now we have the 6 seed Carolina Hurricanes against the 11 seed New York Rangers. Even though it looked like Carolina should be the heavy favorites by looking at the seeding, only 2 points separated these teams in the regular season. Panarin led the way for the Rangers, 95 points, 1000% a Hart Trophy candidate. Sebastian Aho led the way with 66 points for Carolina. This definitely should be very entertaining. Both of these teams were some of my favorite to watch throughout the regular season. They both play a really fun, fast-paced, up-tempo style that it's just super enjoyable to watch. I feel like we're definitely going to see a lot of people split down the middle in terms of predictions for this series. My prediction, however, I'm actually going to take the New York Rangers winning in 5 games. I guess you could kind of call this an upset, but I feel like for the most part, people know that this is actually a pretty evenly matched series. Offensively, I'd probably give the edge to the Rangers. Defensively, the edge hands down goes to the Hurricanes. And in goal, I think I'd actually give the edge to the Rangers as well. I'm not a big Peter Mrazek fan, and I'm rooting for New York in this series. I want Henrik Lundqvist to get one last shot at winning that Stanley Cup. So yeah, I have the Rangers taking this one in 5 games. Next up, we have the 10 seed Florida Panthers in against the 7 seed New York Islanders. Florida is a pretty intriguing team to me. Sergei Bobrovsky had a really shaky year, but if he can find his form in this playoff series, Florida could really be a dangerous team and go on a pretty deep run here in my opinion. The Islanders are a really good team though, and they're getting Adam Pelech back on their blue line. He is going to be ready to go by the time this thing gets underway, which is going to be a huge add for them. My prediction, I'm actually going to go with the New York Islanders winning this one 3-1. I'm not going to lie, I want Florida to win, but they've let me down so many times, me predicting them to make the playoffs year after year, and it's just never happening, and they probably weren't even going to make it this year. I mean, it took a global pandemic to get them in. But now watch, the one time I don't predict Florida for something, they'll probably end up winning the series. And now the final series of the video, the 9 seed Blue Jackets against the 8 seed Toronto Maple Leafs. This series, in my opinion, has a pretty interesting dynamic to it. Toronto won a lot of their games this year from their high-powered offense, scoring a lot of goals, and Columbus, on the other hand, won a lot of their games from their great defense and fantastic goaltending. I feel like a lot of people will definitely look at Toronto as the heavy favorites in this series, but I definitely wouldn't count out Columbus. We saw what they did in last year's playoffs, sweeping the Lightning in the first round. John Tortorella is an amazing coach. He's definitely going to have Columbus ready to go for this series. It should be a ton of fun. And for my final prediction, I am going to go with the Toronto Maple Leafs, but I'm going to say it takes them 5 games. I say they're going to win this series 3-2. I think it's going to be really tightly contested. I think it's going to be a series that definitely tests the Toronto Maple Leafs, and hopefully this gets them ready for their inevitable matchup with the Boston Bruins, because, I mean, it's going to happen. It always does. Now, just to quickly recap things, I had the Nashville Predators winning their series over Arizona 3-1. I had the Edmonton Oilers winning theirs over Chicago 3-2. I picked the Vancouver Canucks to sweep Minnesota 3-0. Winnipeg to win their series against the Calgary Flames 3-1. Then in the Eastern Conference, I had Pittsburgh sweeping Montreal 3-0. New York Rangers beating Carolina 3-2. The Islanders taking it over the Panthers 3-1. And of course, like we just talked about, Toronto winning their series over Columbus 3-2. So that is going to wrap up my predictions for all the qualifying rounds for the NHL playoffs. I know a lot of people aren't really the biggest fan of this format. I'm not really either, but I'm just excited that we're going to get hockey back in some way. and I'm definitely pretty pumped for it. And make sure to let me know what you guys think of these series down below in the comment section. Who do you think is going to win and in how many games? And with that said, if you did enjoy today's video, please make sure to go down there and drop a like on it. And of course, if you guys are new to the channel and you want to see more NHL content like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you all in the next one.